Stephanie. Welcome to A Word to the Wise. It's so good to have you. How are you doing?
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here. It's a wonderful way to start the day.
Yes, absolutely. So you started off as a speech pathologist, is that correct?
hmm
And now you're an intuitive channeler. I'm really curious to hear how your journey into speech pathology, then into intuitive channeling.
Yeah. And I've also done a lot of other things in addition to, and I'll tell
Mm-hmm.
you about them because you'll be able to see the interrelatedness of them.
Absolutely.
Um, I had to pick something in college, right? We all do. And I met, I guess, another student in one of my classes who told me some fun little fact about how one of the most violent things we do to our own bodies is when we cough, because we are slamming our vocal cords together, she told me. And I thought, wow, that's really fascinating. How did you learn
Yeah.
that? And she said, well, I just decided to change my major to communication disorders or speech pathology. And so I literally just walked down that path with her. I thought that sounds interesting. Let me see about it. I love language. So it was very appealing to me. I
Mm-hmm.
love feeding people, and that is a very big part of speech therapy. We deal with everything from the neck up. So the swallowing mechanism, the voice, the brain, all of it. And so that's how I just followed that journey. It requires you to have a master's degree. So that was just a natural step to graduate school. And I've worked as a speech pathologist for 21 years in medical settings. I've loved it, all parts of it. I work with brand new newborn babies. I've worked with people over 100 years old. It's been a very rewarding career. In addition, because I like variety, I added in lactation
Mm,
consultant because dealing with newborn babies who have maybe neurological issues or craniofacial issues that make feeding hard for them, and the mothers who want to breastfeed them, that was really an interest of mine. I've also been a birth doula. I have helped women have natural, unmedicated childbirth
mm.
or get their epidurals in the parking lot if that's what they wanted to do. I've also been an infant massage instructor, a childbirth educator, all things mom, baby,
Mm,
family, I have loved. So about, I don't know, 15 years ago, I started on a journey with my mother as her with a new diagnosis of dementia that she
mm,
had. And our ability to communicate with each other was breaking down. And even though I had a background in speech pathology and I had worked with many people with dementia, it's a totally different game when it's your mom.
mm-hmm.
So at the time, luckily, I had a very dear friend who channeled. And let me explain what channeling is to me: simply connecting to divine energy and
Mm,
bringing through messages or insights or guidance or wisdom from the perspective that doesn't exist outside of ourselves. It's available within us,
mm,
but it connects us back to the truth of who we are, the fact that we are actually souls having a human experience rather
right.
than just independent moving pieces. So my friend channeled my mom for me. I was quite lost. I didn't know how to connect with her, what she needed from me. And I received so much gift from those messages that she brought through, that I realized I would love to learn how to do that as well.
Mm,
And she and I started creating circles of wisdom, of women, sorry, with a center of wisdom where she would channel messages for everybody present. And I realized I'm starting to hear messages as well.
mm.
I should probably go get mentored. So I did. I spent years getting mentored and studying and learning and practicing. And now I have left my job as a speech pathologist and I
Mm.
do intuitive channeling full time. And it is delightful and completely in alignment with my soul's purpose.
Ah, that sounds like such an amazing journey. From doing pathology that you said that was so fulfilling, and now you're doing something else that is just as fulfilling. So, my question is, when you first heard about channeling, were you like skeptical that it would work, or did you feel like, oh yeah, this is exactly what my mom needs, or this is what we need in order to communicate properly with her?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I was fortunate in that I had someone who was very dear to me who did this, and I trusted her.
Mm-hmm.
So if I had heard just the notion of channeling kind of out of the blue, I probably would have been skeptical about it. And we're trained in the left brain thinking all everything about logic, everything about the
Mm-hmm.
five sensories. And so I probably would have doubted it, but she was my best friend. I
Mm-hmm.
trusted her and her integrity. I had seen her channel for so many people, saw how healing it was, and all the messages resonated so deeply, even though they weren't necessarily my messages.
Mm-hmm.
So I had an automatic connection to it. But I work with a lot of people who start off very skeptical. In
Mm-hmm.
this culture, um, we're taught not to value this part of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very easy to go to skepticism, but we also need to just listen to what moves us, because that's true for us too.
Yeah, absolutely. So, would channeling be synonymous to some form of psychic abilities? Is that an accurate, like, comparison?
Another great question. I never refer to myself as a psychic. We
Mm-hmm.
have a in our culture, the way we use certain words and language, sometimes it's accurate, sometimes it's not. What we tend to think of as psychic is predictive, and
Okay.
reading the energy that is coming in the future. And so in the movies and excuse me,
It's okay.
TV shows, we might see psychics tell us what's going to happen to us, or what sorry,
It's
what
okay.
relationship is good for us or not good for us, or
Mm-hmm.
this person is going to do this behavior in the future, so you need to make this accommodation to it now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do that. So I'm clear about what I'm reading when I tune into energy and to guidance is what's present and here right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so that changes. Sometimes that changes as soon as we hang up the phone, or
Mm-hmm.
disconnect the Zoom line,
Mm-hmm.
because we're evolving really rapidly right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's a tuning in to the energy of the moment. I get information from what has happened in the past, say maybe some past lifetime that is
Mm-hmm.
influencing what's happening in this present moment.
Mm-hmm.
And but in terms of psychic versus channeling, those I describe very separately. I do
Mm-hmm.
mediumship work in addition to channeling. And
Okay.
that just means mediumship is connecting to the energies and the souls on the other side, those who
Mm-hmm.
have been embodied and are now on the other side, no longer in their physicality.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so just to make sure, I want to get this correct for the listeners. So channeling is more like intuitive hits in the moment to help, I guess, if you're working with a client, to help them kind of understand what's happening in the present moment.
For me, that's what it
Okay.
is. Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Could you give, like, because I'm really big on like analogies and examples. So could you give an example of like you're working with a client, it's a session. Are they asking you questions, or are you just kind of like, hey, sit down, and then you trying to channel for them? How does it work?
Yeah. The way that I work is I turn the session entirely over to my client.
Okay.
I trust that they know what will be of greatest support to them to hear about. And I
Mm-hmm.
do, if they're not sure what to ask about, then we talk just like you and I are. And instead of listening to what they're saying, I'm listening behind what
Mm-hmm.
they're saying, and their guides, the energies that support them, are informing me of what will be most helpful for them. But generally speaking, the clients that are familiar with my work, who schedule subsequent, follow-up sessions with me, we get on the phone and they have a list. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
first I want to tune into my daughter. My relationship with her is really rocky right now, and I don't know what she needs from me.
Mm-hmm.
Second, I'm thinking about hiring so and so for my business, and I would just like to tune into their soul and
Mm-hmm.
hear what kind of a being they are. What will they be bringing to the table? Third, I want to hear from my cat Fluffy, because she's acting really weird right now, and I want to know how I can help her. Is she sick? What does she need? So that's an example of what, people can ask about anything. People like to
Mm-hmm.
ask to hear from their higher self as well. That's their own
Mm-hmm.
soul. What am I up to? What's my purpose? How am I doing?
Mm-hmm.
The path that I'm taking right now, does that feel like the one that's in highest alignment with my soul?
Mm.
Those types of questions are very common.
Okay. And is channeling something that you could turn on and off? Like when you meet somebody, do you immediately start like are you picking up on their energy and you find yourself like channeling them, or is it something that you have to like intentionally turn on?
I find it most helpful to work when I'm working.
Mm.
And so I have an arrangement with the guides that help me in my spiritual work. They know when I sit down to this table, I turn on my computer, I do a ritual every time to clear out energy that doesn't belong here and to
Mm-hmm.
open to the highest loving frequency. I'm open, I'm on. I will
Mm-hmm.
receive what's here to receive.
Mm-hmm.
When I am in the grocery store, no. When I
Okay.
am shoe shopping, no. That doesn't mean that I don't get information and feel energy being exchanged when I'm out and about. Of course I do. I'm very sensitive to that. Many of us are.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not open to receiving messages to give to others when I'm in my daily life not working.
Okay, so it's not like you get like a strong message about somebody that's like in front of you in the grocery line and you're like, "Oh my God, I really have to tell them." Cuz like you said that you also do psychic mediumship as well, talking to loved ones who've crossed. And one thing that I hear a lot from psychic mediums is that sometimes they're just minding their business and then a loved one will come in and it's like they're like bothering them until they talk to the person that they're trying to communicate with. So
Yeah.
like you're saying you have a good boundary with that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not generally open to that. Occasionally, something will come through
Mhm.
after a session has ended, and that energy we were channeling or that soul is excited and wants to keep going or tells me a little
Mhm.
bit more. And then I let them know next time we will, we'll definitely cover this on the rare occasion, which I actually did this yesterday, the energy of a client's beloved dog came through even
Mm.
after the session and just wanted to give one more beautiful, loving message. So I did email that to her, but
Okay.
that's not typical. That I will say that there's nothing that spirit brings through that is like urgent, urgent. You must relay this. It is life and death. That's not the way that I am working with spirit.
Okay, good. Um is this gift something that we all have within us? Is this something that we can all learn, or are there certain people that are more inclined to having these type of gifts?
I do believe that this can be learned. I learned it.
Mhm.
I didn't have a particular gift that I can identify from childhood, other than being
Mhm.
very sensitive and very connected to life, to animals, to plants, to earth. But I have taught enough people now their own form of channeling to
Mhm.
fully believe and trust that this can be learned. Most of channeling, in my belief, is getting out of our own way. It
Mhm.
is being willing to receive from an unknown place, as long as we are doing the inner work of keeping ourselves as clear vessels, which means
Mhm.
taking amazing care of ourselves, loving ourselves,
Mhm.
having self compassion. Then the messages that will come through will be of a similar alignment and frequency to what we're carrying. So
Mhm.
if your self care is terrible and you feel badly about yourself and you're enormously critical all the time and don't give yourself the benefit of the doubt, the messages are likely going to feel in some resonance with that because that's your belief system. Whereas if you value yourself, love yourself, take good care of yourself, and I don't mean with perfection, because I eat cupcakes for breakfast sometimes.
Mhm.
And I do consider that self-care.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is sometimes. Honestly. Yeah.
So, but I do believe channeling comes through our sixth sense. That's our
Mhm.
intuition. We all have that.
Mhm.
That's why I believe we can all learn this.
Mhm. So when you were first learning how to channel, how did you know that okay, this is not just like my thoughts conjuring up something, but this is actually coming from a higher source? Like how could you tell the difference between your voice and that voice?
That is the hardest thing to address, really, because we're trained to doubt ourselves no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
So anything that comes through is going to likely feel like it's being generated by you,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore, should you trust it? And
Mm-hmm.
so, what I like to say is when you worry that you're making it up, celebrate that you're making it up.
Okay,
Because
that's a different approach. Mm-hmm.
yes, but look around your room right now.
Mm-hmm.
Every object in it has been imagined first.
Mm-hmm.
There is nothing that has ever been created by humans on the planet that was not first coming through the place of imagination.
Mm-hmm.
So why are we saying that if we feel like if it's coming through what we're imagining, why is that not real? Of
Mm-hmm.
course that is real. The
Mm-hmm.
imagination is real. Um, Over time and with practice, you can learn to discern from different frequencies
Mm-hmm.
and you can learn to call in specific frequencies. So when I channel, I am only going to the highest vibrational loving frequency that is accessible
Mm-hmm.
to me at that time. Of course, like I said, it depends on how I have cultivated that frequency within myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I trust and know that what comes through is in the highest service to the person I'm serving. But I did not know that initially. I
Mm-hmm.
went through years of doubting, of questioning, of determining that it wasn't a real thing, and then
Mm-hmm.
eventually I learned to trust,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what channeling is.
Yeah, yeah. So since you've been channeling, has your perspective on the purpose of life and why we're all here changed, or have you learned something new about that has shaped the way you look at the world and our existence?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And it would take hours and hours and hours to talk about everything that I have learned. So, to
Mm-hmm.
highlight a couple important things, what I've learned through my channeling and what continues to come through quite clearly is that our interconnectedness is not just with each other as humans, it is
Mm-hmm.
to the entire planet and all the beings upon it. So even if you don't consider yourself to be an animal lover, we have animal messengers. Animals are working to support us and bring us love and awareness all of the time. So
Mm-hmm.
if you open your eyes a little bit more, pay attention to your surroundings when you're out for your walks, you will notice and you can see, say, a snake crosses your path. There's
Mm-hmm.
wonderful websites called that deal with spirit animals. You can look up the significance of snake and see
Mm-hmm.
how that what was meant to draw your attention in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Plants, same thing. I went to the Amazon rainforest a few years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and the power and the energy that exists there in that part of the planet with the beautiful trees and the endless
Mm-hmm.
plants and animals, it changes us. So the closer
Mm-hmm.
we can get in our connection to nature, because we are nature, we're
Mm-hmm.
not separate than or better than nature, the
Mm-hmm.
more healthy and well and balanced and
Mm-hmm.
loving and intentional our lives can be. That comes through
Mm-hmm.
my channeling constantly.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that I have learned through channeling is that our family, what we call our family, that we oftentimes distill down into this one little microcosm of who, the family we're born into.
Mm-hmm.
No, our
Mm-hmm.
family is all of us right now. You are a relative to me.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody is. And our indigenous siblings know this. They call everyone a relative.
Mm-hmm.
And that is true. That is the truth of our connection to all life and all beings. So the
Mm-hmm.
sooner we can operate from that truth, the more I will care about you and what happens to you, and you will care about me. And we will, can you imagine that? The planet
Mm-hmm.
coming back into service and love and care for one another. That's the planet I imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That is amazing, especially what you said about nature. I just remember and having like animal guides. I don't know if that's accurate of what you just said. Just like having them pop into your life symbolically as like a sign of, you know, that you're on the right path or whatever it might be. And I just remember there was like a couple years ago, I just was like not in the best space possible. And I kept seeing butterflies and ladybugs. Now, I don't know if they were specifically for me. I don't know if it was a coincidence or if it was on purpose. And I used to be like, oh, that's interesting. But I remember I was moving out of an apartment and just like, not feeling the best and stuff. And there was a butterfly hanging on the side of the corner of the like a wall, and there was a ladybug right next to it as well at the same time in my apartment. Like the windows weren't open or anything. So I was like, oh, okay. Like I didn't just like attach some meaning to it. Like they're really coming to me as like a sign like everything's going to be okay. Like you're fine. So what you just said just brought back that memory to me. And it's also really why I'm passionate about these type of conversations, because
Mm.
I think, like you said, we are taught to kind of not acknowledge these things in our lives or downplay them, and not take them seriously. And I wonder for you, do you ever get frustrated when you meet people who are like super skeptic about the work that you do, or just not I mean, they don't have to be open to it, but just really judgmental about the work that you're doing?
I've been really lucky that I have far more people that support my work and pay for it
Awesome.
than
Yeah.
people who would take the time to negate it or try to
Mm-hmm.
prove me wrong. So that's I'm fortunate, very fortunate in that way. And I think it's helped me to build my confidence. So now if I'm in the presence of someone who is skeptical, it's not
Mm.
my job to change their mind. I
Mm-hmm.
am not here to, just because I can channel for anybody doesn't mean that I should or I do. And we
Mm-hmm.
are all entitled to have our beliefs. And sometimes we have to hold very tightly to our beliefs because life is hard and those are the
Mm-hmm.
things that seem to be anchoring us. So I trust that if that person, if they're not open to this, bless them, right? That at some
Right.
point in time they might be, but it's really not my job or my concern to bring them on board or show them the path. I'm really here to serve those that understand what I do and see how it can serve them.
Right, and that are open. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, because you're a channeler now, I wonder, have your personal relationships changed in any way now that you have a deeper understanding of what people might be going through and why they act the way they act?
Hmm. My relationships, some of them have changed significantly. I
Mm,
actually 2 years ago went through a divorce. And
mm,
a big part of that, though it wasn't the only reason,
mm,
was there was not a belief in my work. Um,
mm,
and for years,
mm.
I didn't say, well, because I'm not going to change someone's mind about what
Yeah,
I do.
yeah,
However, for my primary relationship, not to acknowledge an entire aspect of who I am is very painful. And to
absolutely.
continue to go through family relationship with and carrying that was just
Mm,
not something that was serving us
mm,
or our family. So I have to say that I am so grateful to have the gifts and the skills that I do, be
mm-hmm.
able to teach them to those who are ready to learn and use them,
Right.
and willing to let go of relationships that don't have space for me. That's not an easy thing
Mm,
to do, especially when you talk about a commitment like a marriage. But I've learned so much about honoring myself through that process. And also, my relationships are enhanced when I do respect myself in that way.
mm. I just want to snap at taking yourself out of relationships that don't have space for you. That's a big one. That's huge. And it takes a lot of courage to be able to do that. So,
Indeed.
congrats to you for putting yourself first. Um, Another question is, I'm curious, when you are channeling, does it feel like a download, or do you hear a voice? Do you feel it in your body? How do you receive the messages when you're channeling?
Well, they're similar to what you would call a download in that
Mm,
it's kind of all in flow. Um, there is a type of hearing, I would say, but it's obviously not through the sound waves of hearing like you and I are perceiving each other's voices. The messages come through very quickly. I
mm-hmm,
people ask me, "Are you reading something?" No, I'm not reading
mm,
anything.
mm,
It's just that the flow and the pace of it, there's a lot coming through. I close my eyes when I channel so
mm-hmm,
that I can see the imagery that I'm given because it pulls in a more complete picture so I can share with the client, well, this is what else I saw. Um, but I record every session because there's just so much that comes through very quickly. I
mm,
don't want my clients to be taking notes during the session. When we take notes, we use a totally different part of our brain than when
mm-hmm,
we're just receiving, and they will miss a lot of the transmission because I believe they are channeling as well as I am.
mm-hmm,
So it's a beautiful feeling. I would say I do feel it in my body. I feel presence of spirit on my skin. Sometimes before
mm,
a session, I'll check in and say, "Are you guys here?" And I will feel a whoosh of chills down my
mm-hmm,
body. And that's my affirmation like, yep, guides are here. Everybody's in
mm-hmm,
position. We're ready to serve. Um, After the message comes through, I feel just joyful for my client to have that insight so they can use it in their lives to make things more easeful because that's what our guides are here to do for us,
yeah,
make our lives easier, more enjoyable, help us not to take ourselves so seriously all the time. We're
mm-hmm.
actually meant to have fun here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I've just been feeling that a lot lately. Like, life is hard and some people have very traumatic experiences for sure. But yes, we're here to have fun. It's not supposed to be no pun intended, like a do or die or life or death about every situation. So that's great to hear that those are some messages that you receive as well. Can you channel yourself? And I ask that because I know that obviously you're yourself, right? So like your internal dialogue for you is probably a lot higher than when you're meeting a stranger for the first time and channeling them. So are you able to channel yourself accurately?
Um, I have learned from one of my mentors who's a world renowned psychic medium. She advises against channeling yourself for yourself.
Mm,
Not that you can't channel your spirit guides and your guidance system, but when it comes to getting that close to your higher self or whatever, we have natural attachments to things,
yeah.
and we are often not aware of our attachments. But when we bring our attachments to channeling, things get blurry and messy and convoluted, and it's very hard to weed and tease apart what's true or what is just you really wishing it to be
Mhm.
so.
Mhm.
Sometimes when I'm teaching my channeling classes, I actually use a pendulum as a tool when I'm teaching, and we
Mhm.
learn how to get yes and no responses with it, and we learn how to spell out names of guides or beings with
Mhm.
it. And sometimes students will say, I don't understand. I asked this question, am I going to get this job opportunity or am I going to this or that? And it said yes, but it didn't happen. We have attachments, right?
Mhm.
And so it does make things cloudy. So I don't channel myself for myself. I don't term it in that way, but
Mhm.
my guides are always talking to me, and
Mhm.
my soul is always guiding me. I have learned how to calibrate my listening so that I can hear that and listen for that and pay attention to that or ignore the advice because sometimes we do that too. But that's what I would say. I wouldn't, I don't think it's a great idea to channel oneself, as not initially, because we can be so unaware of what else we're bringing to the table.
Mhm. That's good. So, one last question before final words of wisdom to the listeners. Um, what piece of advice would you give to people who are interested in embarking on this journey of becoming channelers or just learning more about channeling in general, what piece of advice would you give to them as they're on this journey if they have any doubts about their intuition or if this is the right path for them?
I find three things to be really helpful for me. One is writing. Writing is a
Mm-hmm.
form of channeling,
Mm,
and journaling is a very powerful tool. When we
mm,
take what's in our mind and cycling around in our worries and we plant it to paper, we give it another landing place, and then that
mm-hmm.
frees us up to be more present to whatever we need to be listening to. The second is get out in nature. As I said,
Mm,
nature is a perfect cleanser of energy that doesn't serve us. Just by going out into the fresh air, just by sitting under a tree, just by gazing at the birds,
mm,
you are brought into a state of presence and
mm,
miracles, really,
mm,
because what living being on this grand planet is not a miracle? They all are.
mm,
That settles our nervous system and makes us more present to
mm,
spirit. And the last thing I would say is self love in whatever way you bring it. That includes different things for different people, but do things every day that honor your right to be joyful, to be here, to be taking up space, to be having your thoughts, your creativity, your ideas. That's very important.
mm. That's good. That's really, really good. So, you know, the podcast is called A Word to the Wise. So, final words of wisdom to the listeners. It could be about what we've been talking about this whole time, or something completely different that you think is important to think about as you go through life.
I would say find something that breaks your heart and go
Mm.
be in service to that.
Wow. That's powerful. That's really powerful. That was really good. That was really good. Thank you, Stephanie, so much. Where can people find you?
Soulinsight.com is my website.
Okay, I'm going to be putting that in the show notes as well so that they can find it easily. Well, thank you for coming on the show. I had the best conversation with you.
Thank you, Jummie. You are delightful.
Thank you.